Deep in the waters of Loch Ness in Scotland lives a creature many have heard of but few have seen. Appropriately named the Loch Ness Monster due to the primary location where witnesses have seen the beast, a large creature of possible prehistoric origins dwells. Welcome to Below the Forest Floor. My name is Nancy and I'm here with my husband/co-host Ryan.
Hello.
We are so glad to be back and would like to apologize for the unexpected absence. I took a very much needed mental health break, but I am doing much better now and I can't wait to talk about all things spooky with y'all. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, it's been a little while, but it we've been trying to work on things getting to the point where we are now.
Yep, and we do have a new recording setup, so we hope you like the new sound.
Yeah, hopefully it works out better.
I'm hoping. Tonight we are going to be talking about the Loch Ness Monster, a truly classic cryptid I am sure many of you have heard of. If you don't know what the Loch Ness Monster is, I shall give you a bit of a quick overview before we go into lore and history. This cryptid basically looks like a dinosaur called a plesiosaur, which has a huge body with a long tail. It's got 4 fins used for swimming around, and it has an extremely long neck. This long neck is what has caused a lot of the rumors and controversy over the years, as it is what has been photographed the most and used as evidence to prove its existence. I remember first hearing about the Loch Ness Monster when I was a kid. I didn't know any lore of it, but there would be news stories with blurry silhouetted figures sticking out of deep water along with headlines claiming so-and-so takes rare photo of Loch Ness Monster, and other stories like that. It was such a popular legend. I remember watching Univision, the Spanish language channel, with my family before school and seeing stories of the Loch Ness Monster pop up on there as well. Heck, there was even an episode of the Magic School Bus where there was a water monster in a nearby lake and Miss Frizz and the kids decided to go check it out for themselves. Did you ever see that one, Ryan?
When it comes to those things, I cannot remember a lot of them, so I may have. I just may have forgotten.
True, that's fair. It's pretty funny because the news reporter in the episode shows like a photo during the segment that looks exactly like the Nessie ones that were going around that time. It's very obvious what this episode was about. That was all I really knew, though, that there was a big monster and it lived underwater. When did you first hear about it?
I remember hearing about it when I was younger. It was like probably mid '90s, so I was like 6 or 7. I don't remember much else about like around that time. I do remember being very intrigued by it ever since then. Like when I was in elementary school, checking out books that were on different cryptids, different like scary monsters and things like that. I definitely checked those out way more than I checked out any other type of book when I was a kid.
And this is the perfect career path that we have chosen, telling scary stories.
Right.
Honestly, same though. That and dinosaurs, which apparently is right up our alley with this episode. Well, thank you, Ryan, for sharing with us your experience with the legend of Nessie. It's incredible to grow up with such a famous legend and yet truly know so little about it. Now, allow us to tell you the tale of the Loch Ness Monster's most famous legend that includes an Irish monk on a trip to Scotland to spread the word of Christianity.
This legend is from the biography of Saint Columba, written in 565 AD. Saint Columba had just arrived in Scotland when he decided to travel down to Loch Ness, where he had saw a man burning a body of his fallen friend. When Saint Columba asked the man what happened, the man told him that his friend was in the loch for a swim when suddenly a large water beast emerged and killed him. Saint Columba decided to see for himself the beast that could cause such a fate by sending one of his followers into the lake to disturb the creature. As the creature emerged and lunged at the follower, St. Columba stepped in. He made the sign of the cross across his body and told the beast, "Go no further. Do not touch the man. Go back at once." And it fled as if it had been pulled away by a mysterious force. Now, in this story, they don't describe the appearance of the Loch Ness Monster, they only call it a water beast, although there's no actual evidence that the water beast in the St. Columba story has anything to do with the Loch Ness Monster. People have decided that with the description and locations, they're similar enough to assume that one of them has to do with the other. So since the Loch Ness Monster isn't described in the story of St. Columba, How did people decide what it should look like? Well, sometime before the first reported sighting of the Loch Ness Monster in the 1930s, there was a huge discovery in the world of paleontology.
The year was 1823, and Mary Anning had just discovered the very first ever plesiosaur skeleton. Georges Cuvier, the man some people call the father of paleontology himself, was in such disbelief that he claimed the find was a hoax. This resulted in a debate at the Geological Society of London, where Mary Anning wasn't even invited because she was a woman. Women weren't allowed in the Geological Society of London until 1904, 57 years after Mary had passed away. Eventually, the scientists decided, without Mary, that the find was legit, and Georges admitted he was wrong. On top of all that, Mary wasn't making much financially, even though there were way more skeletons and fossils that she had found, and people were basically taking credit for it. So she wasn't making much. I swear, this is gonna come back to the Loch Ness Monster. So in 1830, her friend Henry de la Becque decided to help her out by selling his art and giving her some of the profits. He was a geologist and a painter and was absolutely enthralled by Mary's recent discovery, so he painted the very first depiction of a plesiosaur ever. The picture shows an ichthyosaur fighting two plesiosaurs with a few pterosaurs sitting on some rocks watching. This kind of art is now called paleo art. Because these depictions were now in circulation, people were claiming to see certain things in large bodies of water that had features similar to these paintings. Because of this, many people have speculated that the Loch Ness Monster may just be a plesiosaur that never died, or that plesiosaurs in general have been able to survive and continue to breed over many centuries. Though scientists have brought up many examples as to why that may be impossible. Here are just some to name a few. Number 1. The plesiosaur is a saltwater creature, and the Loch Ness, where the people claim to see Nessie, is completely freshwater. Number 2. People claim that the Loch Ness Monster is able to hide and thrive in deep murky waters of Loch Ness because of how difficult it is to see. But the plesiosaur was an air-breathing reptile, so it would have had to come up pretty often to survive. Although because of Scotland's foggy, rainy weather, it might be difficult to know when Nessie is coming up for air. Number 3. It gets too darn cold. The plesiosaur was a reptile, which means it needed warm bodies of water to hang out in for it to survive, and it was most likely found in tropical temperatures and the Pacific, what ocean was it in? Pacific Ocean. Sorry guys, I lost myself.
Yeah, you're good.
So honestly, it doesn't sound like it could be a plesiosaur, but what do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, all the depictions and the numbered facts that you have present that you just put out, it's all pretty true, where the water would be way too cold for something like this. That from my knowledge, at least, I don't feel like that would ever be a thing. I want it to be true. I've always saw the plesiosaur. Speaking of like stuff like this, people say that what is always mistaken for a sea monster is a certain appendage by giant whales, but that couldn't be for this either, because the loch has nothing that's that big like a whale or anything in it in general, so it could not be that as well.
Yeah.
I've heard everything from floating debris and stuff like that that all kind of could be imagined to be this big monster.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Honestly, I think you're right, because I've always wanted that to be that as well, but there are so many more examples. Those are just a couple that I found, but there are so many more examples as to why Nessie could not be a plesiosaur exactly, but that doesn't explain the decades worth of eyewitness reports either.
And on top of that too, it's the same conversation as it is with the megalodon,
Mm-hmm.
why the giant shark went extinct, and they were basically, there's not enough food where it would be living at for it
Yep.
to actually like thrive.
Yeah.
I don't remember, it's been a long time since I actually did too much research on this, because with these ones you did the research and I'm just kind of being the viewer's point of view through all of this. But it I don't believe that it would really have enough food to sustain its large body.
That's actually one of the examples in the scientific paper that I found that was written about from a paleontologist. Another reason why the plesiosaur could not survive, especially in the Loch Ness, because the Loch Ness isn't a part of like any ocean that other waters could get to, because it used to be a series of icebergs that actually melted and created the loch.
It also, I do remember hearing one thing that it before, oh, what was it? It was either the land masses around the loch raised up and cut it off from a large body of water,
Hmm.
or it was the fact that the water lowered itself enough to where it actually was separated from. It apparently used to be, way back when,
Hmm.
it was connected to a body of water that emptied into an ocean at one point, but it was way too long ago, sort of a thing.
Yeah, I understand. Like, some people could argue evolution was a thing. Like, they spent so much time hiding underwater from people that they became uh, able to breathe underwater, maybe grew gills. And that would take centuries and centuries of evolution, but who knows, honestly.
And the same thing also with going, like, if you want to believe that this whole thing is true, like especially with the evolution path, you could think of it being an evolutionary path where a saltwater creature can, after a really long time of, but the problem with that is that it would need to breed enough to
Hmm.
be able to actually get its evolutionary track down to the point where it can breathe fresh water from salt water,
You would
which,
think,
yes, it's possible,
hmm,
but no, it would not be able to take uh what I'm trying to say. It would take a lot longer than almost any
yeah.
of the rest of this.
And going based off of that, it would probably, so many people would find so many at that point, constantly breeding so big, so massive in different parts.
Yeah,
It's definitely
yeah.
something that would be like worst kept secret. And of course, some people would argue, well, that's why you keep seeing pictures of them pop up.
Yeah, but pictures aren't skeletons.
This is true. And on top of that, people have reached the depth of some oceans already. I actually showed Ryan a video the other day. Some scientists have already reached the bottom of an ocean and they haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, and they have combed a lot of Loch Ness just looking for
Hmm.
anything that is very large, which, speaking of things like that, there is one story of a different creature that I would love to be able to do with you, and it was one that was shown on Destination Truth, where there was the sea monster in, I think it was Japan.
Ooh.
I'll look it up and see, and I'll show it to you. But I think that we could probably do, if we could find enough stuff to make an episode on that, or maybe put it with something else as well. Maybe do a sea monsters episode in general. We can talk about a couple.
Ooh, that sounds exciting. I am totally down for that.
Anyway, so continue.
Thank you. Although some people claim the first person to ever see the Loch Ness Monster made the report in 1933, that's actually just when the case that gave Nessie its name occurred. You see, sometime between 1871 and 1872, a man named D. Mackenzie from a small village in Scotland saw in the water something the size of an overturned boat moving around quickly and then disappearing. It wasn't until 1934 that he decided to send a letter to the former lieutenant commander of the British Royal Navy turned radio host, Robert Gould, when stories of a Loch Ness Monster had become popularized already. Why did Mackenzie wait so long to tell anyone about such a story? And why, of all people, did he go to Robert Gould? Well, by this time, many sightings of a Loch Ness Monster had been reported, and Robert was a very well known and respected radio host personality now. It had been around 60 years since D. Mackenzie had seen the beast, so he probably decided it was finally an appropriate time to share his account before he got too much older and while the popularity was surging. Why do you think he waited?
That's kind of the thing. It's like, yeah, if the timing has to be right for some things like this, because if I if I think of it as if I put myself in his shoes, saying that you saw something kind of creepy and weird and everything, if you're the only person, you're just on top of normally just being laughed at, it would be even worse.
Yeah.
So when you start to hear the popular, there is a it's a what is it, like a catch 22 where it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, waiting a really long time, then you could just be said as like, oh, well, you're just trying to capitalize on what other people are finding. Your
Mm.
story's just regurgitated from theirs. But if you do it by yourself, and it's like, oh, why? How are you the only person? It's a damned if you do and damned if you don't. You know.
You have to think about it. That was like the 1870s. Like that was back then when people were still like, which?
That too, yeah.
Like, could
Doesn't
you?
just ask Salem.
Yeah, could you imagine being the one guy that's like, I saw a monster in the lake? People would literally throw you in like the fun house.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's the argument that is made for every single cryptid ever, and that
Yeah.
is just the big word why.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's true. Well, because when I was doing research on this, which I'm going to get into that part right now before we go a little bit further, because this is around that time, apparently people thought that it was another Scottish folklore monster at first, also. What's that one called, Ryan, that has like a horse top and like a mermaid bottom or something?
Oh, it's the I can't remember the name of the
Yeah,
thing actually. It isn't it what like Capricorn was based off of?
I think so. I can't remember, but
I'll do a search while you're explaining this.
okay, so the thing is, there was another cryptid around that time that people were claiming were in Loch Ness, and then
Ah, found
what?
it. When you hippocampus.
That one. So people were saying that's what that was at first, and then they realized that
Ah.
the body was much more different than what they were originally told what it would look like.
Oh, interesting.
So what does it look like?
Yeah, it's a horse with a fishtail.
Oh, it's a horse, got it. So yeah, that's something else
Was that was what you mentioned, right? I'm not like going crazy.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, it's like, did I just search for the completely wrong thing?
Because it was something, there was another word also that they used. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, so we're going to spend.
I'm just finding different variations of spelling for hippocamp and hippocampus.
I'm going to just put in like Scottish water cryptids. uh, Selkie. That's the other one. It's not that. But Selkie was the other thing people were talking about.
Oh, the Selkie horse.
Yeah. Selkie.
Okay,
What?
yeah, it's basically the same thing. Hippocampus is just Greek.
Oh.
This one's Scottish, so.
Yeah, so people thought that other people at that time were seeing Selkies, and because they were actually a part of old Scottish folklore, not just like Nessie, because Nessie's pretty new. The only story that's old coming from that was the one that Ryan read about St. Columba. That's it. Everything else is very modern about it. But because people were seeing stuff in the water, they thought that it had to do with the Selkies and that people were finally starting to see them.
Oh,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah.
So, the surge that was caused for the popularity of Nessie in the 1930s was the first, it was because of the first modern report, and this is so funny, so I can't wait for you guys to hear all about this. The first modern report of Nessie was made by the Inverness Courier, May 2nd, 1933. This independently owned Scotland based news company published the first ever article where the mysterious creature of Loch Ness was called a monster. It had not been called a monster before this. This gave way to the modern name that we all know and love, the Loch Ness Monster. Just a heads up, if anyone is curious about seeing the full article, courtesy of the Inverness Courier website for themselves, we have uploaded a copy to our Patreon, along with an ad-free version of this episode for our Forest Deity members. The article was titled Strange Spectacle on Loch Ness and was written by Alex Campbell. Alex Campbell was a pretty interesting man himself. He was a part-time journalist and an official water bailiff for the Loch Ness when he created this article. Ryan, may we get to the article read, please?
Okay. I think it's kind of interesting that this came out by someone who spent a lot of time on the loch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of interesting. Now, however, comes the news that the beast has been seen once more. On Friday of last week, a well-known businessman who lives near Inverness and his wife, who is a university graduate, when motoring along the north shore of the loch, not far from Abriacan Pier, I probably butchered that, but sorry. They were startled to see a tremendous upheaval on the loch, which previously had been calm as their proverbial mill pond. The lady was the first to notice the disturbance, which occurred fully 3/4 of a mile from the shore. And it was her sudden cries to stop that drew her husband's attention to the water. There the creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a simmering cauldron. I don't know why I said coffin. This whole little news article kind of reads like it would back then. So
Yeah, it does. It took me forever to actually, because the news article, I'm gonna, if anybody is a part of the Patreon, you can see it. I had to zoom in 200% to read the words on it, and then I still had to look up some of the words, and it's like, is this what you're really trying to say?
oh yeah, okay, that makes sense now. Soon, however, it disappeared in a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed that there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths, because apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a steamer. So that'd be, what, like a steamboat probably? One of the...
Yes.
The watchers waited for almost half an hour in the hope that the monster, if such it was, would come to the surface again, but they had seen the last of it. Interestingly enough, this wouldn't be the last time Mr. Campbell would speak of the Loch Ness Monster. In 1977, he appeared on a television show called In Search of, on an episode that was all about Nessie. I have seen that.
No, you have.
Yes, because In Search of came back on TV in the 90s or early 2000s, and they had this, and I believe that they had this version of that where they kind of like showed this was the old one or something.
Uh-huh.
But either way, I remember this being on TV when I was a kid because I had watched the episode Nessie. I thought this guy's name sounded familiar as I was reading that. So that's interesting.
That's really cool, actually. And the fact that you watched it as a kid and now you're doing an episode on it as an adult.
I had many Loch Ness Monster books and drawings back in the day. Like when it came to dinosaur figures and stuff, also Plesiosaur was one of my favorites, mainly just because of the whole Loch Ness. Because I knew of Loch Ness before I knew of that dinosaur. So.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. I actually loved plesiosaurs also. When I was a kid, I entered a float contest at my school, and we created a dinosaur float. I was like in 3rd grade. And what we did was, like, I wanted to make a plesiosaur look like it was coming out of like the water, so we painted a little patch of the box blue. We cut the head off of one of those little brontosaurus mini statue dinosaurs, the plastic ones, and then we glued it to the box where the water is, so it looked like it was coming out of the water.
Oh, nice.
And I actually got like 3rd place on that, which I was pretty proud of.
Nice.
Thank you. So we've heard some legends and we've discussed some origins. So now I think would be a great time to discuss our thoughts on what we believe the Loch Ness Monster could be, or if we believe it even exists at all. I have a question first, though. Do you think Nessie can be an alien?
Like, it's possible.
Why do you think it's possible?
Because when it comes to something like that, anything is possible at that point. It's just the real thing is, like, what am I trying to say with this? It depends on what you're trying to explain is like how in the heck Nessie got here then if they were an alien.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're almost a completely amphibious creature. So they just live in water. Um
Just had a
how
silly
did they
thought.
get here?
I just had a silly thought, like to answer your question. Because like we talked about like the scientific stuff, we talked about the actual like lore and stories. So here's like the theories and the conspiracy theory parts. Okay, so like, what if this is all just me being silly? What if all the cows that aliens take, they're like trading it?
Oh,
Like they'll give us a Loch Ness monster, and they take a cow.
my my thought would be because as you were saying this, I actually kind of answered my own questions like how can Nessie get here?
Uh huh.
Do you know of the concept of how fish get put into
Yeah.
oceans and like not oceans but like lakes and everything at
Yes.
high altitudes where they drop them from
A
a
plane.
plane?
Yes.
Can you imagine the aliens airdropping Nessie into the water?
Can you imagine them airdropping a few Nessies though? Can you imagine? Like, I gotta draw that. Like, just an
There'd be no
airplane.
more water. There'd be no more water in the loch. Just like 3 Nessies would shallow the loch
Could you
completely.
imagine though, looking up and seeing an alien spaceship, and you just see these giant Nessies like, it's like
You would not be how in the like how would you be able to break that to people? Which would you honestly say first? So it's like that you saw an alien, or going a step further, it's like you saw an alien airdrop a dinosaur into a lake of water.
and you know what is really funny? People have claimed, many people, more people than have claimed to see Loch Ness, the Loch Ness Monster, have claimed to see alien activity at the Loch Ness.
Oh, really? There's like alien activity going on at the loch too?
Yes, apparently. I looked up a little bit of it. There have been so many people that have actually seen UFOs, claimed to have had alien sightings, and all that other stuff. There's books on it on like different websites. There's In Search of Aliens, Mystery of the Loch Ness, that is all aliens. It doesn't have anything to do with Nessie.
Okay, yeah, a quick little search. There's apparently lots of UFO sightings above Loch Ness. That is great. Wait a minute. Okay, this is what is I saw something from Amazon. It is a what is it? It's an
Hmm?
it's a pop socket of Bigfoot riding Loch Ness with a UFO above it. Okay. Okay.
I love it.
That's enough internet for today. But no, like that's interesting because yes, you can kind of think of it as something like that where
Uh-huh.
and do you remember that one video we watched a while back of the cow being transported to the veterinary hospital where it's just kind of like being picked up by the helicopter and flown?
Oh my
Can
god,
you
yes.
imagine something like that? Is like you see this gigantic water cow basically being carried and then dropping it into
Can,
the water.
can I just say, I love the idea of calling Nessie a water cow. It's perfect. That I love it. Did you know there's also a documentary, and it's free to watch. It's on Pluto, that is called Alien Encounter at Loch Ness, but like the little picture for it, the I don't know what it's called, is of Nessie.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's really crazy that aliens and Loch Ness kind of go hand in hand. I don't first okay, so like the first thing I thought when I was gonna ask that question was like I just imagined a Nessie standing, or I guess laying at the controls of a spaceship. And he has like
Its flipper just smacks one of the buttons and it goes down.
just imagine he has a little headset on, right? And like, you know how UFOs have that little glass dome at the top? That's for its neck because it's too it's too long.
It's too large. Or it's just a disobedient pet. It just got dropped off somewhere like Bigfoot did.
Oh my god, can you imagine? Like the aliens are at Loch Ness. People are like, oh god, alien sighting, alien sighting. and they're like trying to camp or whatever, and they're like, crap, they saw us. So like the aliens rush to their ship. They're trying to call Nessie, and they're like, come on, boy, come on. And Nessie's like, and runs into
The I lost it.
Nessie's just running into the water, like, dang it, we gotta leave him. I'm sorry, guys, this went off the rails.
When it gets towards the end of these things, it kind of has to be.
It always does, though. Okay, now, like, the other question. Do you think Nessie is a dinosaur after hearing all of the information that we heard?
Closer to dinosaur than alien, definitely.
I'm not saying closer to alien. I'm not saying Nessie. I'm not saying Nessie went and ran away from his alien family. I'm crying. But I don't know if I could classify it as a dinosaur anymore at all. Like, I used to. That was my thing. Like, I used to be like, it's probably a dinosaur. But hearing all of the information that we heard about the whole saltwater versus freshwater thing, the way it would need to eat to be able to even populate and survive, and for it, honestly, there would just have to be so many for it to keep on repopulating. Like, at some point, they'd become inbred.
Yeah, well, a lot of creatures are in general.
But there's a certain point where some are not too inbred after centuries and centuries and centuries. You would think they'd be like,
That's fair.
yeah, no, they're gonna get caught. Their little brains aren't brains anymore. It's pudding. But that's just my thought on it. Is I don't know if it could be a dinosaur anymore after hearing all of the information that was given. I feel like it's just very improbable. Do I personally feel like Nessie exists? What do you think?
I would still, I don't know. Like I really do believe so, but there's far too many both yes and no types of facts, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, but here's the thing also. We've talked about the possibilities of it being an alien, right? We've talked about the possibilities of it being a dinosaur, but we haven't talked about the possibility of, hear me out, magic.
at that point, almost any of this stuff would just be considered that
That's the
wouldn't it?
thing, though. Yeah, that's the argument that some people have. I'm not saying it's me. I'm not saying I'm some people. I'm just saying that's the argument that some people would have. It would be the whole, it could be magic. That's the explanation as to why you don't see it very often when it does need to come up for air. That's the explanation as to why maybe you can't find it under the water. Maybe it's an alternate dimensional being that just, the water is the portal and it kind of goes in between different dimensions and hangs out in one dimension most of the time and then comes over here the other rest of the time. I don't know.
I do personally feel like that if it is something, it could be like a plesiosaur. It could just be a further on evolution of it, where because there have been discussions of it having a tail. Plesiosaur didn't have a tail.
Mm-hmm.
Or it did, it was just very, very short.
It was a little nub.
Yeah. But the ones that I've actually seen and heard about, some of the depictions of like when whatever they saw goes underwater, the tail actually comes up out of the water a little bit, or at least it brushes the tip of the water.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you would think of it like a body of a plesiosaur, like humps across the back, could be kind of like spines or anything,
Mm-hmm.
long neck, and then the long tail. It might not even really be a very big creature. It might be fairly small too. Who knows?
Ooh, that's an option I haven't heard yet. What's your
But
theory on it
the
being
thing is,
small?
I'm just thinking about it's like, because then it would be able to actually survive.
Mm-hmm.
Something with its skeletal structure might just kind of look like a fish's skeletal structure and not have the bones that go out to the fins. The fins could just, this is just like me spitballing things here. I don't know how accurate this could possibly be, but just kind of thinking about it, it's like what if the bones could just be what if the bones could look like a fish's bone?
I never thought
And
of that. Huh.
and it's like we don't know it when it comes up for air or anything like that, because yes, it is very, very murky and cloudy in Loch Ness.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely seen plenty of stuff that's discussed that, and there's enough like plant life around the edges of it that if it does have a long enough neck to be able to get itself close to the shore and just put its nose up and just breathe in and out that way.
I didn't think of that actually. My brain just goes, it takes its whole neck out, the whole head, it's everything. It's like, wee! Hello, everybody.
And that's yeah, that's
Hmm. That's pretty interesting. I really like your take on it because
Mm.
have you seen that little water dwelling creature people are calling a Pokemon online that it's like really, really bright blue and black and it has like a bunch of little looks like fingers and people hold it in the palm of their hand.
I think.
It just makes you think like, what if Nessie's little like that? What if he's a little baby? What if he's just so tiny? I don't know. And then it's magic. Then he just grows.
It's like a puffer fish.
Oh my god, can you imagine? Nessie like panics and he just whoa, and he just gets ginormous. Oh my gosh. There's so many possibilities, honestly, because then there's like the whole other option if magic or I guess alternate dimensions exist and all that other stuff. Could that be like the whole land of the fairies or land of the fae? You know,
Mhm.
could he be a creature of the fae maybe, and they protect him from being seen more often than not?
Yeah.
Because Scotland, Ireland, all of those areas have fae lore also. Could it be the nymphs that are in the water that prevent people from seeing Nessie most of the time?
And that would be the other side too, is like if you think more on the supernatural side, there could be something that is just stopping people from being able to see it, you know.
Like Hogwarts. There I go. There she goes again.
So when you wanted me to look up and check the whole Selkie thing,
Yeah.
I came across something that's pretty interesting that could potentially be its own episode.
Okay.
I want you to search for something called the Nucla V or Nucla V. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely will be doing that then at the end of this episode.
Look, no, look it up
Oh,
right now.
right now.
I want to hear your
Can you
because
copy and paste the name on Discord? I don't know how to spell what you just said.
NUCK
Oh. NUCKELAVE.
EL. Yeah, it's the one.
What is that? What is that? What are those?
It is
Oh,
a mixture of a horse and a person where the torso of the man is actually fused into the body of the horse.
what?
But
Why?
the horse is it's a whole horse, but it's only got one eye in the forehead of the horse.
What?
And it's from Scotland and Nordic folklore.
I
Orcadian.
I hope Nessie has never had to see this monster before. We
It has been blamed for plagues, drought, and death.
Oh my god, this is terrifying. Okay, see, this is what tells me about the whole supernatural side of Nessie. If this thing is wandering around, why can't Nessie? Why can't Nessie be wandering around when this thing exists? Exists. Air quotes.
So there's a little teaser for something possibly in the future.
Oh my god, that's terrifying. Some people say it might be a Fae zombie.
Yep.
What the heck?
When you started saying Faye, I was like, oh, here we go.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying, y'all. I am so creeped out by this. I'm gonna have nightmares. See, I could do research on Nessie at night because it's cute. I think the Loch Ness Monster is adorable. I think it's a big puppy. But this thing, I'm having nightmares and I'm awake. Thanks, Ryan, I guess.
Yeah.
That might be, there's so many options now on things we can do for our next episode. It's just the possibilities are endless, honestly. But time to end our very first episode back. Whether Nessie is an alien, a dinosaur, a monster, or more, they are welcome here with us below the forest floor. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Stay tuned for more in the near future. We would also like to thank our forest deity patron, Lotus Vincent, for your continued support of the podcast. If you would like to have your name featured at the end of an episode of Below the Forest Floor, make sure to become a Forest Deity member today on our Patreon.
And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for being here with us and hanging out. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.